The downtown bank lobby buzzed with the usual mid-morning rush. Customers lined up, some tapping on phones, others balancing checkbooks, all waiting for their turn. Through the revolving glass doors stepped a young black woman in a neat gray suit, her hair tied back simply, her posture calm yet confident. She carried a small leather folder close to her chest. For her, this was not an ordinary errand. She had come to complete an important transaction, one she had prepared for carefully. As she approached the counter, her presence drew a few curious looks. Not because she was loud or dramatic, but because she carried herself with quiet dignity. She spoke softly to the teller, explaining what she needed. The teller glanced at the papers, widened her eyes slightly, and excused herself to call the manager. The amount involved was larger than what most people brought in on a regular weekday morning. The bank manager, a tall white man in his 50s, stepped forward with a forced smile. He greeted her, but his eyes carried a question that his words tried to hide. He looked her up and down quickly, his mind already forming assumptions. Instead of listening carefully, his attention drifted to her appearance, her skin, her youth. He wondered silently, how could she have such money? Something doesn't fit. The girl calmly explained again, showing the documents in her folder. They were neatly arranged, official, and clear. She had nothing to hide. But the manager only skimmed them, as though searching for a flaw. His smile tightened, and his hand pressed his suit pocket where his phone rested. He leaned slightly toward a colleague and whispered, "Keep an eye on her." His tone carried suspicion. The colleague looked uncomfortable but nodded anyway. The lobby continued its regular rhythm, people filling out forms, pens scratching on paper, but around the girl, a circle of tension began to build. Minutes passed. The manager returned to his office under the excuse of double-checking. Behind closed doors, he called the FBI. In a low, urgent voice, he said he suspected fraud. He described the customer vaguely, focusing more on her being young and suspicious than on the actual documents she had provided. He wanted backup, as if the situation was already dangerous. Back in the lobby, the girl sat quietly in a chair near the counter, her folder still resting on her lap. She was patient. She knew procedures took time. What she didn't know was that the very person meant to assist her was working to place her under a shadow of doubt. The minutes stretched. A few customers noticed the tension. Some saw the bank staff glance too often at the young woman, whispering behind counters. She shifted slightly in her chair, not nervous, but aware that something unusual was happening. Suddenly, the glass doors opened sharply, and two FBI agents stepped inside. Their presence drew immediate attention. Suits, badges, steady eyes. Customers straightened in their seats, whispers spread quickly. The bank manager hurried forward, relief showing on his face. He pointed discreetly toward the young woman, as though he had solved a puzzle and was now presenting the answer. The girl looked up calmly as the agents approached. She didn't flinch, didn't panic. Her eyes were steady, her hands resting lightly on the folder. When one of the agents asked for identification, she opened the folder and handed over not only her ID but also official documents that carried federal seals. The bank grew silent. Even the pens stopped moving. Everyone seemed to wait for the agent's next words. The manager stood near the door, arms crossed, expecting vindication. In his mind, this was the moment she would be caught, exposed as a fraud. He imagined himself praised for alertness, for protecting the bank. But the girl simply sat there, calm in the storm, her expression unreadable. She had walked into the bank for a simple transaction. Now, with the eyes of strangers fixed on her, she waited for the truth to surface. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and no one knew yet that the next few minutes would turn the entire scene upside down. The two FBI agents walked with slow but firm steps across the lobby, and every sound in the bank seemed to fade away. Customers held their breath. Some leaned a little to the side to get a better look. The tellers whispered among themselves, while the bank manager followed the agents like a shadow, his chest puffed with a quiet pride. He was sure that in a few minutes, everyone would see that his suspicion had been right. The young black woman remained seated. She did not shift nervously, nor did she drop her gaze. She simply looked at the approaching agents with calm eyes. When they reached her, one of them introduced himself politely. The other agent observed quietly, his hand resting lightly on the inside of his coat where his badge was clipped. "May we see your identification, ma'am?" the first agent asked in a steady but respectful voice. The girl nodded. She opened her leather folder slowly, revealing neatly organized papers. She handed over her government-issued ID first, then a few official documents. Her movements were not rushed. Her hands did not tremble. She had been in serious situations before, though no one in the bank knew this yet. The agent took the ID, scanned it, and passed it to his partner. As they checked the information, the bank manager leaned closer, his tone sharp. "She came in with a very large transaction," he said quickly. "It didn't look right to me. I've seen this sort of thing before. Probably a front for something shady. You'll see." His words carried certainty, as if he had already solved the case. The agent held up his hand, signaling for silence. He didn't like assumptions clouding a case. Instead, he turned his attention back to the girl. "Where are you employed, ma'am?" he asked. She met his gaze without hesitation. "Federal Cybersecurity Division," she said clearly. Her voice carried confidence, not arrogance. She then gestured to the papers she had given them. "You will find all my credentials there." A ripple of murmurs passed through the customers waiting in line. Federal Cybersecurity. Some raised eyebrows. A young boy tugged on his mother's sleeve, asking what was happening, but she hushed him gently. The manager's smile faltered for a moment, then he chuckled nervously. "That's what they all say. Fancy titles, fake documents. I've seen it before." He folded his arms again as if nothing could change his opinion. The agents did not reply to him. They were busy scanning the documents carefully. One agent pulled out a small device from his pocket to check authenticity. The papers carried real seals, barcodes, and holographic marks that could not be forged easily. The more the agents examined them, the more their expressions shifted from neutral to something else: surprise, recognition, even respect. Meanwhile, the crowd inside the bank grew restless. Some whispered that maybe the manager had made a mistake. Others thought perhaps the girl truly was someone important. The silence broke only with the quiet beeping of the scanner the agent held. Finally, one of the agents looked up. His eyes met his partner's, and without words, they seemed to agree on something. Then he turned to the young woman and gave a small nod, almost like an acknowledgement between equals. The bank manager frowned, confused. He tried to press forward. "So? What did I tell you? Probably caught her red-handed, right?" His voice carried forced confidence now. The agent slowly shook his head. "Sir, we'll handle this. Please step back." His tone was firm. The manager opened his mouth to argue, but the steel in the agent's eyes made him fall silent. He stepped back, though unwillingly, his face flushing red with embarrassment. The young woman, still calm, folded her hands on her lap. She did not smile, she did not gloat. She simply waited, knowing the truth was about to rise above suspicion. The second agent handed her ID back with care, almost with reverence. He then straightened his posture and said, "Ma'am, we know exactly who you are." At those words, the atmosphere in the bank shifted. The murmurs grew louder. Customers leaned closer, staff members froze at their counters, and the manager's face lost its color. The girl inclined her head politely but said nothing yet. She let the moment hang in the air, the suspense wrapping around the room like a cloak. The first agent's next words would change everything for everyone inside that bank. The words from the FBI agent carried through the entire bank like a quiet bell. "We know exactly who you are." People froze, unsure what he meant. The young black woman sat upright, her calm eyes steady on the two agents. She had not raised her voice once, but now the silence around her gave her more power than if she had shouted. The first agent opened her folder again, flipping through the official papers she had brought. He pulled out a certificate with a gold seal, raised it slightly so his partner could see, and then returned it carefully to its place. The respect in his hands was clear. He was not treating her as a suspect but as someone to be honored. The second agent nodded. "This young lady," he said clearly, making sure the whole room could hear, "is a decorated federal cybersecurity expert. Just last month, she helped lead an operation that stopped one of the largest online fraud networks this country has ever faced." A wave of gasps swept through the bank. Customers leaned closer to each other, whispering in disbelief. One elderly man muttered, "So she's the one they talked about on the news." A mother with her son looked at the girl with new admiration, nudging the boy gently to pay attention. The bank manager's mouth fell open slightly, but no words came out. His face grew pale. Just moments earlier, he had been certain of her guilt. He had believed that by calling the FBI, he would expose her. Now, the same FBI agents stood before everyone, praising the very person he had tried to accuse. The young woman lowered her eyes for a moment, then lifted them again. She was not surprised. She knew her work had gained recognition, but she never flaunted it. She simply allowed the truth to stand in its own light. One of the agents straightened his shoulders and, in front of everyone, saluted her. His partner followed, and the sight was breathtaking. In the middle of an ordinary bank lobby, with customers clutching checks and slips of paper, two federal agents stood tall, saluting a woman who had walked in quietly just minutes earlier. The customers erupted into applause. The sound filled every corner of the building. Even the tellers, who had been whispering nervously before, now smiled and clapped behind their counters. Some even looked a little ashamed that they had doubted her at all. The girl rose from her seat slowly, her folder still in her hand. She returned the salute with a simple nod, her face calm and steady. She did not need dramatic words, the truth spoke for her. The bank manager stammered, trying to gather himself. I didn't know. I was only doing my duty," he said weakly. His voice trembled, and the pride he had carried earlier was gone. He looked much smaller now, standing in front of everyone who had just witnessed his mistake. The young woman finally spoke, her voice clear. "Duty is good," she said softly. "But suspicion without reason can destroy lives. You didn't even give me the respect of looking at my documents properly." The manager swallowed hard. He wanted to apologize, but the weight of his error made the words stick in his throat. His face burned with embarrassment, and he shifted uncomfortably under the eyes of the entire lobby. The FBI agents exchanged glances, then one of them added, "If people like her did not do the work they do, none of us here would have the safety we enjoy today. It's because of her efforts that millions of dollars, including money from banks like this, are saved from criminals." The applause grew louder. The girl's calm posture and the agent's respect created a moment no one present would ever forget. It was not just about her achievements, but also about the way truth had revealed itself so powerfully in front of those who had doubted her. The bank manager lowered his head, ashamed. The tables had turned, and everyone knew it. The applause in the bank lasted for several long seconds, echoing across the high ceiling and polished floors. Customers clapped with enthusiasm, and even people who had come in tired or impatient suddenly felt alive, as if they were witnessing history inside an ordinary building. Some took out their phones to capture the moment, though out of respect, no one moved too close. The young black woman stood tall in the center of the lobby. She did not smile too widely, nor did she show arrogance. Her calm expression carried more weight than any anger could. She waited until the sound of clapping softened and the attention of every eye returned to her. The FBI agents remained by her side, their presence now not as investigators but as protectors. Their body language showed clearly that she was someone to be respected, not questioned. Finally, she spoke, her voice strong enough to carry across the room but gentle enough to feel like she was speaking to each person individually. "I came here today for a simple reason," she said. "I wanted to handle my transaction quietly. But instead, I was judged by my appearance before my papers were even read. That is not only unfair, it is dangerous." Her words hung in the air. People nodded slowly. The truth of her statement was clear. One woman whispered to her friend, "She's right. It could happen to any of us if people keep making assumptions like that." The young woman continued, "Suspicion is not wrong when it is based on evidence. But suspicion based only on who someone is or how they look, that can destroy a person's name and confidence in seconds. It almost did today." The bank manager's face turned red. His hands twisted together nervously. He wanted to defend himself, to say he was only doing his job, but the weight of the moment silenced him. Customers were looking at him now, not with respect, but with disappointment. The young woman turned her eyes to him directly. She did not raise her voice, but the firmness of her tone was undeniable. "You didn't read my documents. You didn't ask me real questions. Instead, you rushed to call federal agents on me. That was not caution, that was carelessness. And if they had not known me, your choice could have damaged my reputation forever." The entire lobby stayed quiet. Even children sensed the seriousness of the moment. The bank manager opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again, realizing there was nothing he could say that would erase what had just happened. One of the FBI agents stepped forward. "She is right," he said clearly. "We respond to all calls, but our duty is to protect the innocent as well. Too often, people are judged unfairly. But today, the truth was clear." He gave a respectful nod to the young woman, reinforcing her words. Customers applauded again, softer this time, not out of excitement but in agreement with the justice they had just witnessed. The young woman took a step forward, her folder still tucked under her arm. She looked around at the faces of the people in the lobby. "This is not just about me," she said. "It is about what we choose to see in others. Do we see their character, their effort, their work, or do we see only what our eyes assume in a moment? Every person here deserves to be treated with respect first." Several people nodded and murmured words of agreement. One elderly woman even clapped again quietly, moved by the dignity in the girl's words. The manager, shrinking into himself, finally spoke in a low, trembling voice. I am sorry. I made a mistake." But the apology sounded weak. It came not from true understanding but from fear of consequences. The young woman recognized this. She didn't lash out, though. Instead, she let his words sit in the air, showing the difference between empty regret and real accountability. The FBI agents exchanged glances again. Then one of them said, "For the record, this young woman is not just a cybersecurity expert. She serves as an advisor on financial security to institutions across the country. She has authority here, more than most people realize." The whispers grew again, louder than before. Customers turned to each other with wide eyes. Some even gasped. The bank manager's knees seemed to weaken. He looked at her now not as a suspicious customer, but as someone who had the power to make decisions about his very job. The young woman did not rush. She let the weight of the information sink into everyone present. Then she said quietly, "It seems I walked into this bank as a customer, but I stand here now with a responsibility. A responsibility to make sure what happened to me today does not happen again to me or to anyone else." Her words struck deep. People could feel it. This was no ordinary customer. This was someone who carried not just documents, but authority, dignity, and a sense of justice. The bank manager lowered his eyes, sweating slightly. He knew the tide had turned completely. Where he once thought he was in control, now he stood as the one being judged. The scene had shifted entirely. A bank lobby that had started the morning like any other was now a place where truth had stood up against prejudice. And in that moment, everyone present knew they had witnessed a turnaround they would not forget for a long time. The silence inside the bank stretched on, heavy and unforgettable. The young woman stood at the center of the lobby, holding her folder, her calm gaze fixed on the manager who had doubted her. Every customer, every teller, and even the FBI agents seemed to be waiting for her next words. The bank manager, who had once strutted with confidence, now stood small and pale, shifting nervously as the weight of his mistake pressed down on him. The young woman finally spoke. Her tone was steady, clear, and filled with quiet authority. "I came here as a customer. But I am also here as something more. I am not only a federal cybersecurity expert, I sit on the National Financial Oversight Board. That means I have direct responsibility for making sure banks like this one operate fairly, lawfully, and without prejudice." Gasps filled the lobby once again. Some people covered their mouths in shock. A few whispered to each other, "She's on the board, and that means she has power here, real power." The manager's knees seemed to tremble as he realized the truth. The FBI agents confirmed it. One of them stepped forward and said, "She speaks the truth. She has authority not just as a professional, but as someone who oversees the standards of banks across the region." His words were like a gavel striking in a courtroom. The young woman turned her gaze back to the manager. "You didn't just disrespect me. You disrespected your duty. Instead of handling my documents properly, you chose suspicion without evidence. You risked my dignity, my name, and my trust in this institution." The manager stammered, I didn't mean," his words trailed off. Everyone could see his fear. His apology, weak and unconvincing, floated in the air but found no ground. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her calm strength made every word sharper than anger ever could. "Because of your actions, this bank has failed its responsibility today. And as a regulator, I cannot allow this to go unanswered." The customers leaned forward. No one moved toward the exit. No one wanted to miss what was coming next. The young woman opened her folder and removed a small, official card embossed with the seal of her office. She held it up for the manager to see. "By the authority given to me on the Financial Oversight Board," she said, "I am terminating your position as branch manager of this bank, effective immediately." The words struck like thunder. A collective gasp spread through the crowd. The manager's eyes widened in horror. "Why, you can't," he whispered, but his voice lacked power. "I can," she replied firmly. "And I will. This bank, and every bank in this country, must represent fairness. Your actions today showed the opposite. Consider this your final day in this office." The FBI agents didn't move to stop her. In fact, one of them gave a slight nod of approval, as if justice had been served right before his eyes. The customers erupted again, this time not just in applause but in cheers of support. Some clapped loudly, others whistled, and a few even shouted words like "Bravo," and "That's justice." The sound rolled through the lobby like a wave, shaking the walls with its energy. The manager hung his head, his pride gone. He had started the morning as the one in control, but now he stood humiliated in front of his own staff, customers, and even federal agents. Slowly, he turned and walked toward his office, his steps heavy, his shoulders slumped. The young woman did not gloat. She did not smile with triumph. She simply stood tall, allowing the crowd to express what she herself kept contained. When the cheers softened, she spoke again, this time to everyone. "Let this be a reminder," she said. Dignity is not a gift you choose to give only to those you approve of. It is a right. Every person who walks into this bank deserves respect. No one should be judged by their face, their skin, or their age. Only the truth matters. Her words moved the room deeply. Some customers wiped their eyes, surprised that a simple trip to the bank had turned into a lesson they would carry for years. One teller stepped forward shyly and said, "On behalf of the staff, we're sorry. We should have spoken up sooner." The young woman nodded kindly. "It is never too late to do what is right," she replied. She turned back to the FBI agents and thanked them for their professionalism. They saluted her once more, then left quietly, their duty complete. Finally, the young woman gathered her folder and walked toward the exit. As she did, customers moved aside, giving her a clear path, some even nodding or bowing their heads in respect. The sound of applause followed her all the way to the glass doors. She stepped out into the sunlight, the noise of the city greeting her once again. Behind her, the bank lobby was forever changed. People would talk about what happened that day for years, telling the story of the young black woman who walked in as a customer, faced injustice, and walked out as the true authority. And somewhere inside, the former manager sat alone, realizing too late that prejudice had cost him not only his pride but also his position.